A group of blind men heard that a strange animal called an elephant had been brought to the town, but none of them were aware of its shape or form. So they tried to find it, and when they found it, started touching it to feel how it looks like. The first person whose hand landed on the trunk said, "This being is like a thick snake." For another one whose hand reached its ear, it seemed like a kind of a fan. Another person who touched its leg said the elephant is a pillar, like a tree trunk. The blind man who placed his hand upon its side said the elephant is a wall. Another who felt its tail described it as a rope. The last felt its tusk, stating the elephant is like a spear. This ancient Sufi story is a great way to introduce someone to the core idea of systems thinking. When we mistake the parts for the whole, we lose perspective and miss the context in which seemingly isolated events occur. Especially when it comes to problem solving and creative thinking, what we usually fail to grasp is that the problem we face is part of a system of problems, and that also the problem itself can be regarded as a system that can be broken down into smaller problems. We are raised in an event-oriented thinking world. We see the world as a complex succession of events rather than as a system as a whole. Event-oriented thinking assumes that each event we experience has a cause, and that changing the cause will correspondingly change the event. However, that's the antithesis of how the world functions. Famous systems thinker Donella Meadows writes in her book Thinking in Systems, a Primer. Let's face it, the universe is messy. It is nonlinear, turbulent and chaotic. It is dynamic. It spends its time in transient behavior on its way to somewhere else, not in mathematically neat equilibria. It self-organizes and evolves. It creates diversity, not uniformity. That's what makes the world interesting. That's what makes it beautiful, and that's what makes it work. Understanding the endogenous nature of systems and how they can shape the fabric of our reality constitutes a turning point in one's personal development journey. Today I will attempt to explain how a systems thinking mindset can re-engineer the way one approaches one's endeavors. Remember always that everything you know and everything everyone knows is only a model. Get your model out there where it can be viewed. Invite others to challenge your assumptions and add their own. This is my model. When we look at a system, rather than comparing it to what we want it to do and then saying it is failing if it doesn't do that, we should instead look at what it is doing well and then study how it is designed to do that. Whenever you face a setback or things don't go the way you have planned, there is absolutely no reason to get discouraged. Let's say you worked hard on a project, but you eventually failed. Your failure depends on various reasons, but that doesn't mean that the system of working hard actually failed. While working hard on hard problems, you train your memory muscle and you improve your analytical thinking, which results in overall better problem-solving ability. Eventually, you will succeed on a similar project and the overall working system improves. Systems thinking can help us see that quote-unquote failing systems are essentially a way to evolve our thinking patterns. In our society, most of the conundrums we face are a consequence of our inability to connect the dots in the relations between our systems. As Donella Meadows writes in her book, there are no separate systems. The world is a continuum. Let's use an example from real life. In most countries, the problem of gang-related violence, especially in youngsters, is usually attempted to be solved by more policing, because event-oriented thinking suggests that violence is solved by imposing order. However, the problem of youngsters joining gangs is often related to family dysfunction, and the family issues may be related to unemployment and so on. It is a structural issue that requires a systems thinking approach. Problems do not occur in isolation, but in relation to each other. This also applies to the way we approach problem solving. Whenever you feel frustrated by a problem you face and you think you are never going to reach a solution, try and think of other areas that affect your problem. Let's say you're facing social anxiety. This is a psychological issue that is deeply rooted in the constitution and psychological background of the individual, but it might also be a byproduct of the environment that the individual decides to inhabit. Maybe you don't go out a lot. Maybe you don't expose yourself to unfamiliar situations. Maybe you don't partake in group activities often enough. Systems thinking can help us see that what may seem as an isolated problem is actually part of an interconnected network of related events. It is a critical tenet of systems thinking to always learn from your experiences, regardless of their negative or positive nature. Becoming aware of what a system tells you every day is an asset. By learning how to evaluate the feedback you get, you develop an awareness that allows you to learn from what the system tells you. In every endeavor you embark on, be constantly aware of your accomplishments and try to evaluate your progress on a regular basis. Feedback coming from both yourself and other people related to the endeavor, mainly experts, not random outsiders, is endemic to the fruition of the endeavor. As you attempt to optimize a system, bear in mind that results after applying feedback do not occur instantly. You can't navigate well in an interconnected, feedback-dominated world unless you take your eyes off short-term events and look for long-term behavior and structure. Unless you are aware of false boundaries and bounded rationality. Unless you take into account limiting factors, nonlinearities, and delays. For instance, if we give a person medication and they don't get better fast, it would be dangerous to give them more medication instead of simply wait for the medication to kick in. Understanding these delays is important so that we don't overreact during a lag period, thinking that no change is happening when in fact it is just delayed. We usually have a bad tendency to judge early whenever we attempt to change something in our lives. If we don't see immediate results, we get discouraged and give up. The idea of delay is crucial to the systems thinking concept. It takes time to experience lasting, optimized results, and this is an integral part of any serious system. Addiction is finding a quick and dirty solution to the symptom of the problem, which prevents or distracts one from the harder and longer-term task of solving the real problem. Whatever your personal ambitions and goals might be, when it comes to systems thinking, you need to embrace long-term solutions instead of quick and easy fixes. Long-term solutions require the proper understanding of each part, for the stability of a system is predicated on the harmony between the parts. That's such a crucial aspect of personal development, and that's why I often suggest the adoption of a generalist mindset. The generalist mindset urges you to delve into different topics and eventually try to develop an interdisciplinary approach when it comes to thinking and learning. You start to think in systems, and this mode of cognition leads you to deeper states of consciousness that challenge the way you interpret the world. You become more aware of your own existence, your own limitations, and your own potential. The mechanics of the world start to make sense, and you start to perceive patterns. As philosopher Isaiah Berlin once said, "To understand is to perceive patterns."
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment below something cool please, so that more people can discover it. If you want to watch more videos from my channel, check out this one and this one. Take care, see you soon. Adrian out.